Thank you very much for the excellent introduction. So this is an opportunity to talk a little bit about why it matters to engage communities in research. And it's something that I've learned as I've gone through, and someone who's interested in, whose research, my focus is to improve the health of individuals who are living with HIV or at risk for HIV, and among those as well, individuals who suffer from addictions. So with these two focuses in the context of migration, and I think going on to the next level of looking at the human-human interaction, it's an opportunity to really understand the relevance if we want to develop science, if we want to develop information that will be useful to communities. There are opportunities to engage communities at different levels. And so that's really what I want to focus on. And I'd like to, why does it matter? So, the why it matters is the relevance of research to the individuals for whom it's being focused. As an example, if I develop a health intervention, let's say I develop a fabulous pill that can help individuals avert different secondary infections if they're suffering from HIV, tuberculosis. But and that pill requires that I take it 3 times a day and that I have a certain regimen. But I never really, after the clinical trial, understand how that pill should be taken in the context of someone with low resources, in the context of someone who has a job that they can't stop and take their pills. So the importance of our research as it goes from bench side to patient to community is something that I want to talk about. And then the other angle is funding. So who's concerned about this? NIH is interested in how we engage communities. CDC is interested in how we engage communities, and so forth. So there's also a financial part of it, which is so dear to us in research dollars. So we'll go through today, why does community engaged research matter? What are some strategies to engage communities in research? And how does one determine whether one has been successful in doing this? So first, bear with me with this quote. It's very powerful. It's not enough to come to a community and do research. The community is not about research. That's a university academic perspective. The community is about solving problems and challenges that it's facing. The research can aid in that process. So as much as possible, we have to push beyond the research. This is from the perspective of a community member who has been engaged in the research process. These are the communities with whom I have had the privilege of being engaged, starting from the state of Yucatan in Mexico. There is an indigenous community that other researchers have introduced me to. And in 2011, I started my work with this community, with local anthropologists, with students of psychology, of human ecology from Yucatan, and learning from each other. So this has been an understanding of how migration as well impacts risk. But if it weren't for really being able to speak with members of the community and understand their perspectives on risk and migration, isolation, substance use, I wouldn't be anywhere. And the research really would not be as meaningful. So these communities migrate up to Inglewood and Anaheim. And there's been maybe 40, 50 years of migration and changing. My other area is in our border, our home, our sister city in Tijuana. And I also look at the dynamics of population in a border context. These are the communities that I have to get to know. So this is our traditional paradigm, which is a very good one. Community research is really at looking at different ways of interacting with the research. Community-based is making sure that you're there and there's relevance. Quickly, let's look. The researcher develops an idea. She contacts the community agencies to collaborate. That might be the inroad. The community with the characteristic or health condition of interest is invited to participate in our study. The community, you can see, is in the center. The data is collected by our research team. The data is analyzed. We disseminate, which is our responsibility. Conferences, journal reports, advocacy, clinical practice. And then we continue building on knowledge that each of us have contributed. I want to challenge you, though. Here's where we can bring the community in. And it's not that it needs to be at all of these levels at the same time. That's too daunting. Our resources don't allow for it. However, creatively, there are opportunities for us to engage the community. So my own experience, which has been pieces of these, I co-generate the idea, or my community partner. I work with community clinics. There may be a clinical need. Maybe some of the patients are not coming back for their appointments as they need to. The idea is born. And then we look to community support to locate perhaps hidden populations that we would like to learn about. So as an example, let's say that I would like to work with a community of men who have sex with men who are very high risk for HIV and substance use behavior. I don't know where those communities are, but I do know that the clinic has outreach workers who do know. And those outreach workers hold different forums. So this is an opportunity where the community is really allowing me to understand what their needs are. Training members of the community in data support and supporting data collection, providing critical feedback. I've had opportunities to work both in Tijuana and San Diego, and inviting community members to be trained and paid as survey workers. In that process, I train them as I would train my own students in research ethics to understand why are we asking the consent form? What is the relevance of this? And can I skip around? What is the relevance of asking a question, a survey, in a uniform manner? So individuals who start to work with us then become part of this collective understanding of the relevance of research to communities. And I want to even give you the spillover, the potential spillover that was unintended, but I had learned about it later. Of course, money will dry up, and we wait until there's another opportunity to continue working. At the end of one project, I learned that some of the individuals who were trained were eligible to work as research workers in Tijuana or San Diego because of the skills that they had learned in working in a research environment. So that was not something I intended, but by listening to the community and understanding the potential that it can have, that research can have, to improve the opportunities for individuals in the community, it's one example. Data analysis. If it weren't for community engagement, there are times where an analysis that my laboratory had run might have been an error because we went back and checked with our community partners and asked, this is what we're finding, this is how we're articulating it, what is your thought? And the community, our community, one partner said, most of this looks good, but this one variable, this one item that you're telling is the opposite of what we see in the clinic. And so we went back, and sure enough, we had not coded that variable properly. So the quality, so here we are thinking, engaging community members in different perspectives about the research can improve the quality of our research. So we can also validate findings by allowing access to data, and then if the community decides, they can mobilize with the information. We also look at giving the information back to the community. There was an opportunity to go back to Yucatan after the first wave of research and meet with different community groups, including the community clinic, the leadership at the time, and a group of school teachers. They listened to the information, gave us feedback, and said, we are concerned about the risk of our adolescents. They're participating in risk behaviors that we think are dangerous to them. That then became the next step for the research to make it relevant to the community. So how do we determine, or how does one, this is my metric for determining whether I'm on the right track in working and serving communities and generating research that's relevant to answer problems. My litmus test is I get invited back. This is a team of both students, SDSU, and Yucatan students who are now actually professionals, and this is our story. Thank you.
Why did you get interested in this community in particular, the one in Yucatan?
In Yucatan?
Yeah.
This was an introduction from a colleague, and that is a question that's actually, I receive that quite often. How does one start working in a community if you don't have a relationship in a particular community with whom you'd like to work? So this was a contact with an anthropologist who has many years of experience working with indigenous communities and migration. And that relationship developed over Skype. We co-wrote a research grant together that was funded, that then funded the initial wave in which I was involved. So it became a partner in Yucatan, affiliated with the Institute of Anthropology in Mexico. And that person was a mentor to other students, graduate students, who were also interested in migration and health. And I had my students who are interested in migration and health. And we met and were able to work together to conduct the field work. Did I answer your question? Thank you.
It looked to me like your recipe for engaging the community is great for health and human services, but I'm a mathematician. How would you, it's important at least as much for sciences and for the rest of us to engage the community and at least get the word out that we're doing something useful, at least the public perception. But I don't see any of your recipes applying. Can you help?
Certainly. I think there's an opportunity for all of us scientists to engage with different members of the community, and that could be through public forums. Now there's a very, I think at a very basic level, there's opportunities for, it could be through the media. This, I think, also speaks to the importance of scientists having transdisciplinary relationships. And so perhaps if there's a message that you would like to relay or would like community members to understand, that would be an invitation for us to talk about it and maybe invite other, you are also my community. I wanted to expand that to the academic community and research community. I think that this speaks to the need for us to, as researchers, reach out to each other. Maybe this forum will spark some opportunities for us and some interest for us to learn from each other in that way. There is another question that I in terms of mathematics?
Well, no, in terms of basic research, it's not mathematics so much, but getting the public interested in, and fundamental basic science and principles, I think, is really hard. Perhaps, or maybe impossible.
Yeah, well, perhaps I would like to posit. It is understanding of how you will create something and your research will contribute to the development of an instrument, as an example, the calibration of a medical instrument that's being used.
Very applied research.
Okay. Thank you for your question.
Hi, Maria.
Hi.
So I had a question. I used to work on a family health project, an intervention in trying to get families to eat healthier. And we used that traditional research model where we went into the community and whatnot. It strikes me that this kind of engagement would probably lead to better outcomes in intervention, if you have a health intervention that's in a particular community. We were looking at Latino families. Have you done anything to analyze that kind of impact of this type of intervention for
That would
improving
require
health?
longitudinal data. And at this time, we haven't had the opportunity to follow families. We know that some of the families in our studies have been in other studies, but it's a limitation. It really is. But we also understand that by retaining the ongoing communication with our community partners, we are understanding how they are using our information to address gaps for some of the patients and helping the patients engage in care. And that's the best I can, at this point. I think that this requires our work together for longitudinal studies, which are hard to fund. But thank you very much for your comment. Thank you. Yes.
So in agriculture, there's another model I've seen called Farmer First, where the community actually create the research. And not only do they help develop the questions, but they actually design the experiments. They own the data. They own the problem solving. It doesn't always generate the best science. But would this work in a public health model, or would, in agriculture, no one dies? But have you seen that kind of model approached in public health?
The opportunity to have the community own the data, and I think it really depends on what we mean by own. So I can speak to an example where I have the data set, however, the access to my community partner was open, even after the funding dried up, and they were applying for a grant and asked, could we generate statistics for them that would help them better articulate the needs of their service population, and we were able to do that. So I almost see it as a co-ownership, but I think the spirit with which one tries to conduct community engaged research is where you are making an effort to get away from this, what we would call the peek, poke, and run. You go to the community, you pull up the corner, you peek around, or poke around, you take the information and you run, and that has undermined, really, our ability to be more effective. So it's taking time to get the trust back. But in that spirit where you're sharing power, and to the extent possible, write in the grant proposals what is going to the community partner. And I would say challenging to the extent that your research allows for it, because not all research will allow for this. If there is a partner that you can write in as your co-investigator, I've even had a co-principal investigator from a community setting, an individual who was a leader in her field, and that was very compelling. NIH really thought that this was something worth funding, and they did. And we developed some very nice papers from this, and knowledge that went back, and the community, we co-own the information. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.